right, so before I get this one started off, I figured I'd open up with a few more introductory matters. So these are things I missed in the last video. I wanted to give you guys an idea about what to expect from this channel, the sort of topics I'd cover. So if you've known me for any amount of time, you know I'm a very I like controversial subjects. So my favorite things to talk about are going to be theology, politics, economics, psychology, medicine, specifically medical ethics, that sort of area. And I've spent a great number of years reading, researching, and sort of exploring these subjects in my own time. And as a consequence, I've developed my own sort of system of views around that. And I call it a system because I've developed over time sort of like a unifying theory. I think everyone kind of does that with the sort of views that they believe, where they try to find a way to make everything fit together. So for me, politics and religion are not separate issues. Generally, people have their political views and they have their religious views. I have a view, and my view encompasses both. So my sort of unifying theory is going to be one of the things that I'm presenting to you. I'm probably going to do it in a series of videos. So I think first, though, I'd like to start out with a series of like a top 10. My top 10 realizations that have helped shape the way I think today. Like my top 10 formative realizations. I don't know. You'll find out whenever I title the playlist. But this one's the realization that I'm going to talk about in this video is a very simple one as far as the libertarianism element of my politics is concerned, right? Is the concept that law and force are integrally and inseparably related, right? So the argument goes something like this, and this is something that really took me by surprise because my background is I was very much in high school and even before that entrenched in, I don't know what you want to call it. So modern, not alt-right, but close politics. And it took me a while to sort of get to the point where I could step out of that bubble and question it and really look at it under some sort of refining light. And this is one of my big realizations. So all law is essentially force, right? And the reason for that is that any law that any government makes at all, excuse my phone, any law that any government makes at all is going to be enforced, right? The only power that goes behind that is the eventual power of someone to either detain you and put you in a cage or put a bullet in your head. So, for example, think tax laws. Think about the straw laws. Actually, let's go with the most extreme example right now. So in California, certain cities like San Francisco has banned the use of plastic straws, which means if you're a restaurant owner and you want to use plastic straws, you are going to get fined by the city. So most people just stop there and they think, well, it's just a fine. It's not that big of a deal. But here's really what it is. If you, as a business owner, refuse to pay that fine, you'll get another fine, or you'll have officers come to your door. And if you choose not to comply with them, then you're either going to be tased, detained, thrown in a cage, or if you resist that, you could easily end up dead. So ultimately, all laws, no matter how minute they might seem, right? No matter how harmless they might seem, they are all predicated on the presumption that we can put you in a cage or shoot you if you choose not to comply with us. So that's part of the thing that really shaped my views, because once you realize that, you sort of have to evaluate every sort of public policy proposition. I don't know, alliteration there, PPP. Public policy proposition, you have to sort of look at that through the spectrum of, is this worth shooting someone over? Right? So we can have a lot of views about certain things that annoy us or certain things that we think ought to be done, but we don't realize that they are being done at gunpoint. And that's really what all laws are. There is no way around that, unfortunately. And if you basically try to set up a system in which you exclude the possibility of someone getting a bullet in the head over the enforcement of it, then you remove all of the sort of incentives necessary to make the law enforceable, right? So imagine that, police show up to your door because they're going to enforce some law or some fine that you haven't paid, and you refuse to comply with them and you resist them. If they say, all right, shoot, I didn't know he was going to fight, we'll call it a day then, I guess, because we don't want to shoot this guy, then that's a law that no one's going to follow, because they know if they do exactly the same things, that's the same sort of result that they're going to get. So all laws can be viewed through that spectrum. That's all laws made by any government at any time. That's how it's been in ages past and today. So sort of applying that to modern law, you have to sort of think, I mean, and this is sort of like where my Christian perspective really comes in, right? So we have an obligation to make good laws, right? And if you're voting, you ought to be voting for people and for policies that you can reconcile with your conscience, right? That you actually believe to be good ideas and good for people and righteous in one way or another. So if you have an issue with any particular thing, are you willing to do you think it's right for people to be locked in cages over this? Do you think it's right for people to die over this? Because inevitably what happens when any law is passed, if it's something that's popular and enough people are doing, for example, I'll use the drug issue as a thing. We can have a separate video about that, and we definitely will. But if it is something that is popular and people are going to do anyway, eventually someone's going to die over it. So you have to sort of weigh every legal and every public policy decision on that merit. Is this worth basically throwing someone in prison, reducing someone's freedom to essentially nil, or is this worth actually killing someone over? Because those are the actual stakes to every legal decision. So that's the basis of it. I'd like to hear some more feedback from you guys. Any popular objections, I'm sure I'll address them in a later video. I've definitely not given you the sort of dissertation, everything I could talk about this topic, but this is the absolute bare bones sort of way of doing things. So thanks, guys.